This is part 2, as it were. I put up an earlier video with the title along the lines of, I haven't actually put it up, but it will be put up with the title along the lines of the irony of feminist biology, or something like that. And it's a response to editorial in the Scientific American back from September 2017. You know, a bit old, but you know, it just had come to my attention, and I thought that I'd make a few comments on it. So in the first video, I commented at a sort of institutional level, but in this one, I want to comment at the biological level, and the relevant claim for this video in the editorial is this claim that you've probably heard many times, that that sex is not binary. Not that gender isn't binary, but that sex is not binary. Now, this is ironic because the term gender was originally co-opted. It's sort of a confused concept because gender actually is a grammatical term that's used to distinguish the pronouns bisex, but the term gender got taken over because, I guess, of its association to the sexual identity of the two pronouns, and as a consequence, gender came to stand in for the idea that there's a spectrum of subjective experience of masculinity and femininity, and this term gender was specifically developed because these experiences were not binary and sex clearly was, and so there was the need to create some kind of distinctive identification of these subjective experiences that couldn't be reduced to binary sex. But now we've got this new thing where it's not enough that gender is non-binary, now sex too has to be non-binary, and it's crazy. It's crazy. So the kind of thing in this Scientific American editorial, we have references to. Let me just see if I can find something here for you. It gives you a sense of the kind of thing. Yes. So to varying degrees, many of us are biological hybrids on a male-female continuum. Researchers have found XY cells in a 94-year-old woman, and surgeons discovered a womb in a 27-year-old, or excuse me, a 70-year-old male, a father of 4. And new evidence suggests that brain consists of a mosaic of cell types, some more yin, others further along the yang scale, whatever. So these are the kind of arguments that are made around this whole non-binary sex thing. And the core idea is that, well, we used to believe that males had X or Y chromosomes and that was reliable, and females had XX chromosomes and that was reliable, and you could, if you saw XY, you knew it was male. If you saw XX, you knew it was female. If you saw male, you knew he had XY. If you saw female, you knew she had XX, and whatever, right? And this was the binary nature. And now we've discovered this isn't true, right? There's all these different exceptions. So a few responses to this. Okay, first response: there's not really that many exceptions. Right? They make it sound like it's this vast range of possibilities. Right? We're talking about a tiny number of people, and I've heard figures as high as 1 out of 50 people is an exception. This is insane. This is insane. If you go to the I can't remember the exact title, Intersex Society of North America, something like that. If I remember, I'll put the link below. And they have part of their point, and they talk about how frequent is intersexuality. And part of the point is that it's hard to say because there's so many definitions. It's hard to determine what the right definition is. But they go through a list of proportionality. One in how many hundreds or thousands of people would qualify by this particular definition. Right, and I mean, like most of them, you're talking about 1 in thousands of people, right? So it's not, we're not talking about very common phenomena. First of all, but it doesn't matter because this is the thing, right? Sex is not determined by karyotype. So if you don't know that word, that's a good word to know. Karyotype refers to the profile of your chromosomes, right? The particular set of chromosomes you have is your karyotype. So the sort of conventional, male, right, has the, all the somal chromosomes, and then in the two sex chromosomes has the X and the Y, right? That would be the, the sort of conventional male, human male karyotype, right? And it's understandable that people who make these mistakes would think that sex is defined by karyotype because because it's so common that males have XY and females have XX that it's been shorthand for the longest time, right? But in fact, that isn't what determines what someone's sex is. And one way you know this, I mean, besides, they actually have examples. Like you've got a father here who's got a, I don't know what his karyotype was, right? But I mean, you actually forget the father thing because that was different, in a womb, whatever, right? But I mean, it's in theory, I don't know the details of this. I don't see why it's impossible that you couldn't have a person who was actually a female or male and not have one of the classic karyotypes, but you have to know what female male is to be able to tease out whether that is true. And of course, part of the problem with relying on karyotypes is that there's all kinds of other animals in the world that are sexual reproducing animals that don't have those karyotypes. Right? I mean, first of all, there's actually animals like, for instance, males. A lot of males in the Hymenoptera class that are haploids, for instance. Right? They only have one chromosome, right? So that obviously, I mean, one chromosome for one copy of each chromosome, right? So that's already different, but even more different is the fact that there are some animals like birds and butterflies and snakes that don't have XY chromosomes at all, right? They have completely different chromosomes, with no gene. I believe they have no genes in common at all with X's and Y's, and these are usually called Z's and W's. And furthermore, it's not only completely chromosomes, but the allocation is the reverse of ours. Right. So in that case, I believe it's the males, I believe, have an X and an X. Excuse me, I said X and did I say it's Z and W? Okay, I think I said, okay, if I didn't say that, these chromosomes are called Z and W, right? So the males have two Zs, whereas the females have a Z and a W. Right. And so not just different chromosomes, but actually the reverse allocation of who has two and who has one of each, sort of thing. Two of the same and one of each, as we find in males and in most other animals which do have XY chromosomes. So you can't define sex by chromosomes. It's not defined by karyotype. It's defined by gamete production. Right? Whatever your karyotype, if you're a sexually reproducing species, you either produce a male gamete or you produce a female gamete. Now, with some species and earlier in our evolutionary history, it wasn't always immediately obvious by looking at the gametes which was male and female. This is called isogamous reproduction, where the gametes are very close to resembling each other. But as I understand it, even in isogamous sexual reproducers, it's still the fact that these are eukaryotic cells, and sex is a process of meiosis in which the two eukaryotic cells come together, merge together to create a zygote, which is then going to multiply and become a multicellular organism. So all eukaryotic cells have mitochondria, which is sort of the power source that drives the cell. But it can only have one. And so when the two isogamous gametes join together to form the zygote, one of them keeps its mitochondria and the other abandons its mitochondria when they form together. And the one that keeps its mitochondria is the female, and the one that abandons is the male. So even among isogamous sexual reproducers, there's clearly a male and a female in the reproductive process. However, is not nearly that complicated when you talk about humans, because where anis, I was really pronouncing these words, anisogamous, I believe that's how you pronounce it, anisogamous, which is to say our gametes don't look the same, they look dramatically different. And so, for instance, in the case of humans, the male gamete, sperm, is this tiny little cell. It's the smallest cell in the male body. Basically, it's just the delivery system to get the DNA material into the zygote, or into the, to join up with the egg to form the zygote. On the other hand, you have these female gametes, the ovum or ova, the eggs, which are huge. They're the largest cell in the female body. So dramatic differences in sizes. But of course, the mitochondria thing still applies. The little male sperm still has mitochondria to get it to catch up to an egg, but it still abandons, it still jettisons its mitochondria as they form the zygote. So it's very clear, right? In the sexual process, you are either producing male gametes or you're producing female gametes. There's no third option, right? There's no third possibility. You're producing one of those two kind of gametes, and whichever one you're producing determines what your sex is. That's what sex is. So all this confusion around karyotypes is just a red herring. And it may be sincere misunderstanding and confusion on the part of some people. I suspect on the part of some other people, it's deliberate obfuscation, trying to actually break down people's understanding of what sex is and how it actually works. And by the way, sexual differences, the differences between the sexes grow directly out of this ansogamous nature of our gametes, right? Because the males are so small and so inexpensive to produce, males generally have a whole lot of them, millions of them at any particular time, whereas the female gametes are so large and so expensive to produce, and they have all this nutritional material, all the different organelles that are going to go into making up of the zygote. All the males contributed to some DNA. These are very expensive to produce, and the female has 300 of them in the course of a lifetime. And so as a consequence, the female, this goes to Robert Trivers' famous paper on parental investment theory, which I think I've talked about in other videos. And so there's a cascading effect because a female always has more invested in the offspring and has more to lose if the offspring dies at any point than the male does. And so, and of course, the female also gets stuck with the reproductive process if she makes a poor mating choice. So a whole lot of psychological qualities begin to arise because of the different level of investment at this very biochemical level in terms of gamete production, and as I say, just cascades throughout the process. Now, Trivers pointed out that there's a handful, a few dozen maybe, species where, due to unique ecological conditions, the males ended up being the more heavily investors post-conception. And where males invested more than the females, you actually had the reverse of these psychological traits and physical traits as well, when it was males who were investing more than females. So it's the investment, which most of the time is going to be higher by females, which is going to contribute to differences in psychology of the different species. And that's the root cause explanation of the differences between men and women. But you can't understand that. And you don't have that as a framework for which to make reasonable assessments about claims in relationship to sexuality and sexual differences, sexual dimorphism, if you don't even understand what sex is. And apparently that's really common. So this whole line of argument is silly. It's based in ignorance, and as I say in the other video, the idea that this kind of trajectory of argument is being made to argue for women to be better treated in society. I mean, if you make erroneous arguments about biology to try and promote the idea that women should be fairly treated, if you have evidence that they're actually being unfairly treated institutionally in some way, I mean, this is the wrong way to go. Because when people find out that your biological arguments are erroneous or fallacious, why should they take serious your institutional level arguments, right? You're just undermining yourself by making these kind of arguments. So poor stuff, very bad job, Scientific American. But anyways, look forward to hear your feedback. Until next time, I'm over and